Welcome into the WholeHog Podcast. Seth Campbell joining you, and we joined alongside Richard Davenport. Richard Davenport, the recruiting writer here for the WholeHog Sports, for the Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette, for the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. He does it all for us. And Richard, it's the busy time of the year for you, isn't it?
Well, it's starting to slow down a little bit, obviously, because this is the second day of the early sign-in period, and it appears that right now that Arkansas will finish up with 9 guys as far as early signees. So you still have tomorrow as far as the early sign-in period, and there could always be a surprise that comes out of the woodwork. So but as of right now, I'd say probably 9 is probably what Arkansas will be looking at going forward, going into February signing day.
And 9 is not a bad number for a coach that really, when he was out recruited for less than a week outside of the Northwest Arkansas area.
No, it's not. It's about what you would expect, especially for a staff that only had 6 commitments left from Chad Morris's commitments. So you had 6 guys, and you had 3 of those guys sign. At least 2 others plan to visit Arkansas in January, and probably sign in February. Obviously, that could change. Other schools could come in and maybe get them to visit, but they've already visited. And I'm talking about Tyrese Edwards and Drew Francis from Knoxville West High School. So, but you definitely have an impressive list considering how much time that they had to recruit, and I think overall they did a pretty good job.
Yeah, so let's just dive in. We're going to go through each one of these guys, and you can kind of tell me strengths and weaknesses from these guys. And let's start with Kellen Burrell from Harvey, Louisiana.
Yeah, he's a guy that hold on. Say that again. I'm sorry.
I think I said it wrong.
Linebacker. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Sorry, kind of brain dead here a little bit. But anyway, he's a guy that's got some pretty good speed. I would probably say about a 4.6, 4.7 guy. If you look at his film, definitely has got speed. Breaks on the ball very well. Pretty physical. 6 foot, 220 pounds. I would assume he would play maybe outside linebacker, but has the capability of maybe moving inside. But he had a pretty decent offer list, and I think if you look at his film, you kind of scratch your head and think that maybe some other schools might have jumped on board with him too. But at the same time, I mean, Arkansas did a good job of scouting him. He was a teammate of Donovan Johnson, who safety from the same school, Helen Cox in Harvey, Louisiana, that visited Arkansas last weekend. So anytime you're looking at film of kids and evaluating them, a lot of times you notice some other guys that you see that have the potential to play SEC ball. And obviously Coach Odom and Coach Pittman thought the same, thought that with him.
Yeah, Burley, pardon me on his name there. All right, moving on. 315-pound Ray Curry from Memphis, Tennessee. What can you tell us about him?
It's not a surprise that he flipped from Missouri to Arkansas, because his head coach at Missouri, an offensive line coach at Missouri, is now at Arkansas. So, and he also visited Arkansas during the recruiting process. He already knew what Fayetteville was like and the university was like. So when he visited over the weekend, this past weekend, you kind of thought that Arkansas was in very good shape to maybe flip him, and that's obviously what they did. I was talking to somebody in Memphis just recently who I really respect, and he says that Ray plays with a nasty attitude. And I think, number one, if you're playing on the offensive line, you got to have the physical tools, the size needed. But if you don't have the nasty attitude and really play mean, I think sometimes you don't get the maximum potential out of yourself. And I think with Ray, with him having that attitude, I think that's going to probably be a good thing going in the future for Arkansas. So 6'5", about 315 pounds, just a delightful kid. I remember talking to him shortly after he visited Arkansas one time, and just he comes from a great family. His mom and dad are very serious about academics. Very humble kid. He's not one of those guys that you're going to be reading in the paper one day for the wrong reasons.
And moving on now, another Missouri flip that he threw his Missouri hat down at his signing, running back Dominique Johnson.
Yeah, he's about 6 foot 6'1", about 220, 225. A pretty physical guy, not great speed, maybe a 4.7 guy, but he's one that you look at and think short yardage situation, maybe in the fourth quarter pounding it with a guy that's a little bit more physical. You figure with him going to, say, Arkansas, SEC school, he's going to be able to obviously enhance his athleticism, maybe his speed, and get on a good nutrition plan and really develop over the next few years, and maybe he can get down to maybe a consistent 4.6, maybe lower than that. If he can do that, I think that only enhances his potential.
Moving on now, a guy that some people were surprised that Arkansas was able to pull in, Miles Slusher from Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. It was kind of a late ad. Even head coach Sam Pittman didn't know, he said, until right before midnight, the day before he was going to sign.
Yeah, now see that's another thing with Miles. He's visited Arkansas several times when Coach Morse was here. So again, very familiar with the program. He was very familiar with Coach Pittman because he recruited him when he was at Georgia. So that you already had a prior relationship there, and I think he trusted Coach Pittman, and just being able to visit over the weekend and kind of get to know him a little bit more made him comfortable with Arkansas. And also, there's no doubt that the lure of the SEC, I think, was also in play here. I think that's something that maybe wasn't talked about much, but he definitely liked the SEC. And I think another thing was closeness, being close to home too, allowing his parents to be able to just drive an hour or so and be able to get to Fayetteville. I think's much more convenient than maybe traveling to Nebraska, who was really the other school that he was considering. But very good pickup, a 4-star prospect according to most. Could play safety or could play cornerback.
And if you look at his offers list, it's just impressive. Alabama, LSU, Ole Miss, Missouri, A&M, all from the SEC. And then, as you said, Nebraska, who was really pushing towards the end, Notre Dame, Oregon, others. It's an impressive guy that a lot of people wanted.
Yeah, and again, for Coach Pittman to come in and be able to swing him like he did, and I'm sure obviously Coach Odom had some say in that too. But Nebraska and Oregon, who he was previously committed to, had a much longer relationship with him than Arkansas. So you really gotta tip your hat to Coach Pittman and Coach Odom.
Moving on now, let's talk about the Arkansas kids, and let's start with Jashad Stewart in Jonesboro.
I love Jashad Stewart. When I saw him, saw his film last year or before last year. I think it was about a year and a half ago. I'm sorry. If you look at his film, he's probably one of the more violent defensive ends I've seen in a while. I think he's 6'2", 224. A lot of people see him as maybe as a linebacker too, and I think he's capable of doing that. But I think he'll probably start off at defensive end, but it just depends on where the lines are. If it's a shorter line at linebacker, he may go there. And right now, obviously, Arkansas is in need of linebackers. The numbers are short, but he's a very violent hitter, and that's something that you notice. The ball carrier is always going backwards, and he's really just very physical, and then he's got a great burst too. So again, he could play either position, but he gives you a lot of physical ability and a very physical kid that you'd love to have on defense because he's going to strike the guy whoever's carrying the ball.
And then from Jonesboro, move on down to Hazen, Arkansas, and Blaine Toll. And what do you see from Toll as a four-star prospect by ESPN?
Yeah, I think you're going to see him at defensive end. He could play tight end, but I see him more at defensive end. Very, very good athlete. He ran a 4.88 electronic time at one of the the opening regional in Dallas, which would translate to about a high 4.6 handheld time. And what's incredible, probably one of the more incredible things I've heard for a guy his size. He's 6'6", 244. He's got those long arms. But at age 16, he bench pressed 410 pounds, which is insane. It really
Wow.
is because of those long arms. Usually, guys that are a little shorter arms, a little bit more compact, are the guys that are really the great bench pressers. But here's a guy with long arms and not a 300-pound guy, but around 240, 250, bench pressing 410 pounds at the age of 16, and it was free weights too. It was not machine, so pretty incredible. But athleticism, he's got that. He's got everything you're looking for as far as defensive end with that length and his ability to run, that burst. So definitely see him maybe as a possibility to play immediately as a freshman.
Any worry about him playing his high school ball at kind of the lower classifications in Arkansas and that translating over to the SEC?
I think you always think about that, but number one thing you look for is does he have the physical tools and the things that are needed to play on the SEC level, and his measurements and his speed, his quickness, everything measures out to SEC level. So in the back of your mind, you always think about that, but at least he's coming in with the capability of from a physical standpoint of competing and maybe playing as a freshman.
And now let's move on to Bryant, Arkansas, and talk about Cottrell Wallace. He's used to winning there at Bryant, back-to-back state champions. What do you see from Wallace?
I see a lot. I see a raw, high potential guy. 6'6", 212 pounds right now. You see him, and he's pretty thin. So I see him. He wants to play outside linebacker, but at the same time, I could see him putting his hand in the dirt as a DN too in some situations. But he'll easily put on 30, 40 pounds, and you obviously notice it, but he'll be able to carry 270 if they moved him defensive end and wanted him to pack that much weight on him. He's got very, very good speed, runs about a 4.7, and a very, very athletic kid. Again, just very raw though. I see him as a redshirt guy, but in year 2 or 3, definitely could see him playing on the field.
Those were the guys that Arkansas signed on the first day of the early signing period, but head coach Sam Pittman wasn't done because on the second day he went in and got Darren Turner. What can you tell us about Turner?
He may be, in talking to his coach, and if you look at him, and I've seen him in person, he's a legitimate 6'4", 6'5", about 215 pounds. He's a guy that you could see play on both sides of the ball. I mean, obviously he'll have to probably uh, just depend on what the coaches wanting to do and what's needed. He really likes receiver, and I could see that he could be a big mismatch at receiver. But if he continues to grow, adds weight, I could see him at tight end. On defense, I could see him playing at safety. Could also see him playing at linebacker. So he's probably the most versatile guy that Arkansas's got in this early signing period, as far as the ability to play different positions. So he's very intriguing. It all depends on how much more he grows. If he continues to add weight, you got to start thinking about him as a linebacker or maybe tight end. But if he stays about the same and he continue to physically develop and increase speed, uh, safety or receiver.
And then one more guy here for the Razorbacks that have inked so far in this early signing period is Julius Coates.
Yeah, and this guy is very interesting because Coach Pittman just offered him 2 days ago, and for him to, I mean, again, being recruited by all these schools prior to him committing signing with Arkansas today. Excuse me. It's pretty amazing. Now he told me he always wanted to play in the SEC, and I get that. and that was a big draw. Along with it, just he's got a lot of confidence in Coach Pittman and him, going forward and getting the program going in the right direction. But here's a guy that took official visits to Colorado, Oregon, and Nebraska. Hasn't even visited Arkansas. So that's a testament to the SEC and Coach Pittman to be able to swing him, because he's got excellent size, about 6'6", 270 pounds. If you look at his film, definitely athletic, good speed. I wouldn't say great speed, but very good speed. And you just see a guy that, with him enrolling in January, he'll be able to go through off season, go through spring practice. You're counting on him to play next year. There's no doubt about it. But it just, a lot of times the resources at a junior college is not that not that great. So what kind of jump can you possibly see from him, from say January to next September? Could be pretty sizable. And if that's the case, just because of his physical talent and physical size right now, you only you could possibly see a guy that's really enhanced from a physical ability standpoint just by going through the off season, and then again going through summer workouts too.
Good stuff there. Richard Davenport here on the Whole Hog Podcast. Okay, Richard, we are recording this on Thursday of National Signing Day, the first early period of National Signing Day. Do you expect Pittman and his staff to pull in anybody else during this early signing period?
At this time, I'd probably say no, but there's always a possibility. There could be a late find, a kid that maybe flying underneath the radar that is wanting to play at a higher level than maybe what he's got right now. A lot of kids are waiting till February to sign because they feel like that they're better than what they have as far as the offer list. Maybe Arkansas finds a guy that they see is good. They think, oh, this guy's SEC level, but he doesn't have a SEC offer, or as maybe a low Power 5 offer, and the kid is intrigued by the thought of maybe going to Arkansas and playing on the SEC level. I could see something like that happen. Not sure if it's going to happen, but that possibility exists.
Seems like there was a big emphasis on the defensive side of the ball during this early signing period. What do you think? Why do you think that is?
I think honestly, I think that's just a situation where most of these guys are guys that they had good shots at, and I mean, again, you're trying to build relationships in 4 or 5 days when other schools have a months, a year, or a couple of years. So I think it just kind of shook out like that. That the guys that they had a chance to get mostly played on the defensive side of the ball.
Do you think that continues into the later signing period, or will they come back with some guys on the offensive side of the ball?
Oh, definitely. They'll be it'll be an even class. I'm pretty sure. You don't want to neglect either side of the ball, and I expect them to continue to beef up on the line on both sides of the ball, and then focus on some receivers. There's Savion Williams from Marshall, who was committed to Arkansas. He's supposed to visit in January. I think a very, very good chance he eventually ends up with Arkansas again. So definitely more guys on the offensive line. On the offensive side of the ball for February, and I think it'll be in an even class.
Just a few more questions here, Richard, before we wrap it up on the Whole Hog Podcast. Out of the guys that have already signed in this early signing period, who do you expect to have the biggest impact the earliest?
Oh, that's a good question. I like Darian Turner. I think that he has a chance to come in, and just because of his versatility, his athleticism, his size, I think he's a guy that could possibly see the field next year. Obviously, Julius Coates, junior college defensive end, who will be on campus in January. Whenever you get a junior college guy, you're expecting him to contribute immediately, and I think he's a guy that you definitely look at very, very strongly, expecting him to see the field. And then Kenlon, the offensive line, the linebacker from Harvey Ellen Cox High School. I think he's got the physical tools to do it at linebacker. And I say that because the linebacker position, there's not a lot of depth there, and I could see him because of his ability to run, being able to see the field pretty quickly. And obviously, Miles Slusher, you think a guy that could potentially play safety or corner. It gives you that flexibility in moving him around. Definitely take a look at him. And don't forget Jashad Stewart. I'm really high on him. I think he has a very good chance of seeing. I'll go ahead and just say I expect to see him on the field next year. I think he's that good.
Good stuff there. What about maybe somebody that you want to see maybe get in the weight room, take a year or two to develop before we're talking about them on Saturdays out of this early signing period?
Oh, definitely, Cottrell Wallace. Again, I mean, he's a very slim, 212 pounds. It's 6'6". Uh, I could, if he stays at outside linebacker, he'll be around 240 pounds easily. Because if you look at him right now, you think he's thin, but throw on another 30, 35 pounds, he'll be able to maintain that speed he has, and could potentially be a very, very good SEC outside linebacker because of his speed and athleticism.
All right, Richard, one last question before I let you go. Early signing period is going to come to a close, and then you got the later signing period in February. What's kind of a bigger name maybe that Arkansas fans should look to see if the Razorbacks can get in this later signing period?
Well, they're obviously going after Jalen St. John's, a offensive lineman from the St. Louis area that Coach Odom and Coach Davis recruited at Missouri. He's supposed to visit Arkansas in January. He's one to keep an eye on. Big offensive lineman. I go back to Savion Williams. I think Savion Williams, he's rated a 3-star by, I think, everybody, but I think he's a guy that is vastly underrated. If they get him, like I think they will, I think he could play immediately next season too. He's a legitimate 6'4", 6'5", about 215, 220 pounds right now. He played quarterback this past season for his high school, and you just see his ability to run and his ability to make people miss. He runs like a scat back, even though he's a guy that's much bigger.
All right, Richard. Fantastic information there. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Thanks so much, Seth.
That's Richard Davenport. You can get all of his stuff online at WholeHogSports.com. He will keep you updated on everything recruiting. He is a fantastic resource, and you need to listen to him and subscribe to him and read him, because he will get you the information. And really, the lifeblood of a college football program is recruiting, and that's where it all is going to start, and Richard can give you the information there. Thanks again for listening to the Whole Hog Podcast. We will see you back here later.